And your response was, no, I've had no formal complaints?
That is correct.
And you didn't make any corrections to your deposition transcript, did you?
I did not.
I can't undo Your Honor's mindset with respect to his testimony. That horse has left the barn.
This is the moment a sworn officer's own words came back to bury him, and he never saw it coming. He sat there under oath, hands still practically warm from the swear in, and said it plain, no formal complaints. 2 words that were about to unravel a felony case. Sergeant Jeremy Bryce had one job that day: dump the contents of a cell phone under a warrant and stay inside the lines of that warrant. He didn't. He says he inadvertently saw something else, something damning, something outside the scope of what the judge had actually authorized him to look at. And when the defense tried to challenge that, tried to ask the obvious question, was this cop believable? Was this cop honest? Bryce looked the court in the eye and said he'd never had a complaint filed against him. Clean record, trustworthy witness. Case closed, except it wasn't true. And the man about to prove it wasn't going to raise his voice to do it. Good morning, Sergeant Bryce. Good morning, calm, polite. The kind of calm that makes a courtroom nervous, because everybody in that room, except the man on the stand, could feel where this was headed. How many times have you been sued in court in your life? Bryce shifted. I've received a legal filing once. I've never to the point where I went to court to testify on it, but just once. Already hedging, already working overtime to make wants. Sound like basically never.
How many times have you been sued in court in your life?
I've received a legal filing once. Never to the point where I went to court to testify on it, but just once.
So you've been sued in court once, correct? Yes. I don't necessarily understand exactly what you mean by that, but I have had a civil suit filed against me. Yes. Watch that. Watch him fight the plain English of the question before he'll agree to it.
So you've been sued in court once, correct?
Yes, I don't necessarily understand exactly what you mean by that, but I have a civil suit filed against me, yes.
Federal court, plaintiff named Stephen Heckey, a complaint that, brace yourself, accused Sergeant Bryce of the exact same thing. He was on the stand defending himself for now an illegal search of a cell phone outside the bounds of a warrant. Same allegation, same officer, different case, same pattern.
And was that in federal court?
Yes, it was.
And was that in a lawsuit brought by a Stephen Heckey?
He reviewed the complaint. He answered interrogatories. He signed those interrogatories under oath. He submitted a sworn declaration in that federal case.
Did you review this complaint in federal court when you received it?
I did.
Do you know whether or not an answer to that complaint was filed on your behalf in that federal court action?
I was advised at the time that I received it that our legal division would be providing defense to the Attorney General, so they would be handling that civil suit on my behalf.
Doing some interrogatories or questions from the plaintiff in the case?
Yes.
And did you provide answers to those questions?
I did.
And did you sign the answers to those questions under oath?
I believe, I don't have a copy of that interrogatory form in front of me, but I believe I would have signed the bottom of that form.
This wasn't some rumor floating in his personnel file. This was active litigation he was personally directly involved in while he sat in this courtroom and testified there'd been no complaints. Pause. Let that sit for a second because the attorney sure did. Then the reframe, because of course there was one.
Correct.
Have any complaints been filed against you while you have been an Indiana State Police officer?
If we're referring to internal investigations, as I believed you had meant during the deposition, then the answer is still no.
No, I didn't.
Have any complaints been filed against you while you have been an Indiana State Police officer? Bryce, almost too fast. If we're referring to internal investigations, as I believed you had meant during the deposition, then the answer is still no. No, the attorney said, flat, no room in it. I didn't refer to internal investigations. My question was simply, have any complaints been filed against you? And that's when the sergeant's whole story started to wobble. Knowing what I know now, with the complaint form of the inmate being filed, and that being obviously recalled to memory, then I will answer yes. Translation, yes, but only because you just made me say it. This is where it stops being a misunderstanding and starts looking like a pattern, because the attorney didn't stop at yays. He kept stacking it brick by brick. And that complaint led to a lawsuit in federal court. Correct? Correct. You had to answer interrogatories. Correct. You had to supply documents to counsel. That is correct. You even had to supply a declaration under oath in connection with a pending legal motion. That is correct. 5 straight admissions. 5 straight bricks in a wall the sergeant built himself.
It was on an inmate complaint form, so yes.
And in fact, it was a complaint that led to a lawsuit in federal court, correct?
It did.
And you had to have an answer, or an answer was filed on your behalf, correct?
It was.
You had to answer interrogatories, correct?
Correct.
You had to supply documents to counsel to respond to that lawsuit, correct?
That is correct.
And you even had to supply a declaration under oath in connection with a pending legal motion in connection with that lawsuit, correct?
And then the line that should end up in every clip of this hearing, I can't undo your honor's mindset with respect to his testimony. That horse has left the barn. Not shouted, not dramatic, just said, the way you say something you know is already true and can't be walked back.
Made his impression on you. I can't undo your honor's mindset with respect to his testimony. That horse has left the barn and we can't put it back in. I guess the fundamental question is,
here's why this isn't just about one bad answer on one bad day. 2 weeks after that deposition, Sergeant Bryce became the single most important witness in a suppression hearing that would decide whether Andrew Kosis's felony case survived at all. His name appears 25 times in the judge's own written order.
Goes to the defense, because less than 2 weeks later, in an evidentiary hearing, Sergeant Bryce became a critical witness for the state. So critical that his testimony and his name was referenced 25 times in Your Honor's order deciding the motion. He was a central witness because it was plain.
25 times, the entire plain view argument, the legal exception that let the state keep evidence found outside the original warrant, rested on the court believing Bryce's word about how and why he saw what he saw. And the defense never got the chance to challenge that word because they didn't know until months later that the man they were trusting on his own account had just weeks earlier told a federal court a story that turned out to be false. Judge flat cutting through the noise, so it's uncontested that this was not disclosed, not a question. A verdict on a single fact delivered like a door closing.
All right, so it's uncontested that this was not disclosed, Mr. Schmidt. You're arguing that this is a Brady violation.
Now watch the sergeant try to explain his way out from under it. I took it as kind of a vague question. I perceived it to be asking about internal affairs, to which my answer was no formal complaints. Long, winding, reaching for a version of the story where a man with a law degree's worth of legal exposure just happened to misread 6 plain words.
And how did you understand the question that Mr. Schmid posed to you?
I took it as kind of a vague question, but I perceived it to be that it was asking about any internal affairs types of investigations or inquiries to our internal affairs division, to which my answer was no formal complaints.
And have you had any formal complaints brought against you within that system as you understood the question?
No, I have not.
And why did you understand the question that way?
I don't recall exactly why. I mean, it's been a while ago, but I will say it was towards the end of the deposition. There's obviously a little bit of question fatigue that sets in eventually. I took it to mean any complaints made, I could have, I guess, assumed, any complaints made while I've been an Indianapolis State Police officer could have meant, have I made any complaints, which obviously would not really make sense in the context of the deposition.
There's obviously a little bit of question fatigue that sets in eventually. A cop explaining away sworn testimony as fatigue. But here's the part that should make you sit up. The attorney doesn't let him keep the excuse.
Sergeant Bryce, can you point to the part of the question on page 51 when you were asked about whether any complaints have been made against you while an Indiana State Police officer? Can you point to any part of that question that refers to internal affairs?
There is no.
Can you point to any part of that question that refers to internal affairs? Silence, then there is no portion. 4 words, that's the whole defense gone. Somewhere in the middle of all this legal back. And 4th is a man who isn't a cop, isn't a lawyer, isn't in the room fighting for his career. He's a defendant who was, by the time any of this mattered, sitting in federal prison, filing his own complaint by hand on an inmate form, hoping someone would eventually read it. No lawyer drafting his language for him. No polish. Just a man who said his rights were violated and had to wait years to be believed even a little. Whatever you think about the underlying case, that's worth remembering. The person this all started with had the least power in every room this story passed through. Now the stakes stop being about one deposition and start being about the whole case. The defense attorney lays it out cold. We were denied the opportunity to effectively cross-examine Sergeant Bryce in the evidentiary hearing because of the egregious Brady violations. Translation, for anyone who's never sat through a law class, the state is required to hand over anything that could make a witness look less trustworthy. They didn't. And that witness's credibility was the entire foundation the judge's earlier ruling stood on. We had to take him at his word that it popped up inadvertently, that he didn't blow it up, that he didn't take specific steps to try to see it. Just his word, nothing else.
State had as to how he first saw that screenshot. We had to take him at his word that it popped up inadvertently, that he didn't blow it up, that he didn't take specific steps to try to see it. And even though he knew it was clearly outside the scope of the search warrant, that somehow it was inadvertently seen by him, we had to take him at his absolute.
And now that word has a hole in it the size of a federal lawsuit. The remedy on the table isn't small. Dismissal of the case, or short of that, striking Bryce's testimony entirely, which the defense argues would gut the state's whole plain view argument and hand the suppression motion back in the defendant's favor. The judge doesn't rule on the spot. Instead, one more line that lands like a gavel. I'm quite tired of hearing prosecutors tell me we weren't aware of that information. Well, frankly, that's not good enough.
Evidence. Frankly, Your Honor, I'm quite tired, and I'm not blaming Mr. Luttrell, but I'm quite tired of hearing prosecutors tell me, we weren't aware of that information. Well, frankly, that's not good enough.
Not aimed at Bryce, aimed at the whole system that let this slide through unchecked. The judge confirms for the record that even the court itself didn't know about the Hecky lawsuit until it was raised in January, months after the original ruling had already been made, already been relied on, already shaped the case.
I do want to state for the record, I was unaware of this lawsuit until Mr. Schmid brought it to my attention in January.
To be clear, Mr. Luttrell.